Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Tabitha Sookdeo is making New Haven and Connecticut tick. She's the new executive director of a group called Connecticut Students for a Dream. She and the people she's working with and for are dreamers. People came to this country undocumented as children, correct?
That's right.
And we're going to hear all about what she and they are up to. Welcome, Tabitha, and thanks so much for coming on Dateline New Haven.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So when did you take over?
So my first day was actually on September 3rd, so I'm pretty brand spanking new.
Wow, this is your first month.
Yes.
How's it going?
It's going well. Everyone's welcoming and inviting, and I'm pretty familiar with the scene already, so it feels great. It feels great to be here. No worries.
So Students for a Dream, how long have you been around? Since the Obama administration, or?
Yeah, before that even. So we're in our 14th year. Next year will be 15. So we'll probably have a quinceañera gala at some point. So stay tuned for that.
And are you based in New Haven?
So yeah, we do work in New Haven. Our main office is in Bridgeport, but we are working out of the Pride Center here. We're really great partners with them. And we also are about to open up an office in Danbury.
Oh, so you work out of the so you have several offices?
Yes, we do.
And you live in New Haven, correct?
I do.
That's right, you live in Joint. We're going to get to that a little bit later. So tell us the mission of Connecticut Students for a Dream.
Yes, so we are the largest youth-led organization that helps to move forward the rights of undocumented youth and their families.
And by youth, we're saying up to what age?
That's a great question. I feel like the
It's
target
fungible.
for youth keeps moving up and up and up.
Like I'm 64, I'm getting out of the youth bracket to like the discount.
You're just barely, Paul, just barely. But now I think these days the youth, it's like considered 35 or 40. So I'm still a youth, I suppose, at this point.
But in terms of whom you advocate for, does it really go up that high?
It does, yeah. I mean, mostly we work with high school students, right? So high school age, but we don't kick folks out. They're still part of the movement once they get older.
And if I understand correctly, being ignorant about this, when we're talking about dreamers, we're talking people who are allowed to be here. Like if your parents legally were not allowed to enter the country, but you were born here, you're allowed to be here, correct? Or you're a citizen if you were born here, right?
That's a really great question. Yeah. So if you were born here, you have rights, right? You are an American citizen once you're born here. But really the folks who we're providing services for are still undocumented, right? So you may have been brought here as a youth, many people as babies, and you grew up here, right? But the thing is that you don't have access to, for instance, a work permit or a driver's license unless you qualified for DACA, so the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And that was an executive order that President Obama put into place. And so there's a small subset of undocumented
the Supreme
youth.
Court upheld that when it was challenged, correct?
Yeah, so it's actually back in the courts right now. So there's going to be a court case in the Fifth Circuit Court on October 10th. So we're going to be over there making sure that we're sharing the stories of...
Where is the Fifth Circuit?
In Louisiana, in New Orleans.
Oh, so they go judge shopping.
Yes.
Okay. So it's going to be the Supreme Court again. And what surprised people, if I remember correctly, was that... So DACA says that you're allowed to stay if you're a dreamer, right?
Right. So you're deferred from deportation. So it's not something that's permanent. It's just kind of like a quasi...
For how long?
That's a great question. I think...
But what was the order? Like how long were you deferred under DACA?
So you have to renew your status every 2 years. So, and you have to pay, I think at the time it was in the $500 round, but I think it's closer to $600 or $700.
And is there an age limit that you can keep renewing?
Yeah. So there are a couple of different tenets that you have to meet. So one of them being you have to be here in no later than 2007. You have to be under 30 years old. But as you get older, you can still continue to renew as long as you qualified for the original requirements.
So for up to 2007?
Yes.
So if after 2007, you're screwed. So millions and millions of people are
Absolutely,
screwed.
right. So many of the undocumented youth who we are seeing right now in high schools, they don't even qualify for DACA. And so the landscape is completely different than it was even about a decade ago.
Wow, that's a lot of fear to have hanging over your head.
Yes, absolutely.
So the DACA is now, what's the new challenge? Same old issue, new interpretation of why it violates law?
Yeah, constitutionality, that's a really big part of it, right? It's an
that
executive
it couldn't be executive order rather than Congress.
Correct, right. And the reason why Obama passed it, or he put together that executive
Recording
order
in progress.
was because we couldn't get anything done, even with a, Democratic House and Senate. It just, nobody could get it passed. So that was the alternative, to keep the promise to the undocumented youth.
And since then, even less of bipartisan support. Wasn't it true back then that Republicans, a lot of them did support Dreamers?
That's right.
And in fact, the Supreme Court, which was Republican-led, supported Dreamers. Has that changed now, the landscape?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say it's a lot more conservative, even within progressive.
But the conservative position used to be pro-immigration in American lexicon, but that's changed.
Yes, it has changed dramatically.
Now the right is against, yeah.
Right.
It was always a nativist right, but conservative philosophy was immigration's good.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And so we see both conservatives and progressives just move completely towards the right. So it's a little concerning, and really what we're trying to do is to change that narrative and bring it back up to the forefront about why it's important to support undocumented youth.
And why is it important?
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. So we are part of the community, right? And we contribute to this community. And like, for instance, I'm formerly undocumented and I'm part of this here. Like, this is my home, right? I can't go back to my country in that I won't feel part of that culture, right? Like, this is my culture now. And so we contribute, right, to the economy. I have a number here that undocumented folks contribute over $406 million a year, right? And even though we contribute those taxes, we're not able to access certain types of state services or federal services.
I mean, just on pure economic greedy level.
Sure.
It was always a good deal for American taxpayers that undocumented immigrants here, because we get the tax money, they don't get anything back.
Right, right. And that's just extra, right? The fact that we are
you're
people.
saying it's more spiritual. Basically, you live here. This is your country. You're a person. You contribute.
Yes, that's the first.
Don't kick me out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the main mission. But the focus on youth, so you're focusing on the dreamers.
Yeah, so we focus on undocumented youth, but also their families, right? Because their families are part of them, right? And so we also have this 2-generation approach to where we are supporting the youth, but also their parents need to be able to access certain services. So we're fighting right now for Husky for Immigrants, right? And that's expanding state Medicaid. And so undocumented youth's parents, like, they need to be healthy, right? Because children need their parents in order to survive.
So the children do qualify. You want to have their parents as well.
Correct. Yeah. So we've been able to help to expand state Medicaid up to 15 years old, and we're trying to push further than that.
For people who are undocumented.
Yes, that's right.
How further are you trying to push?
So we would love for everybody to be able to access, but we're doing an incremental push to make sure that the state of Connecticut feels comfortable.
I'm trying to tell me if I'm right. There are two cross currents in the Connecticut immigration landscape politically. One is, I think there's a consensus that's pro-immigration in Connecticut. I could be wrong, but that their Medicaid has really become very big pull on the budget. They're worried about expanding Medicaid, not because of ideological reasons, but because of budgetary reasons.
That's right. Yeah. So that's something that we're trying to pull together research to show why it's financially feasible.
And tell me about that. Is about maybe having more taxation on wealthy people or on profits
That's
people
a good
make,
question.
financial investments.
Yes, I'm trying to get completely up to speed on this. Mostly it has to do with concerns around the fiscal controls right now that has to do with the budget.
That's that whole debate that we had
Yes.
at bipartisan compromise in 2017 where, and it actually worked, where we don't spend a lot of money if we get a lot in short term and certain kinds of tax revenue, so that over time our budget is more stable, and it goes toward, a lot of that money goes towards stabilizing the rainy day fund for emergencies and toward paying down debt.
Precisely.
And we've actually exceeded all the original goals, so we actually can't put any more legally into the rainy day fund. So some people are arguing there's money to play around with, but then there'll be a fight over what it goes toward. Will
Exactly.
it be higher ed? Will it be Medicaid? Will it be immigrants?
Right, right. And I think our argument is that it's all of these things because they're all connected, right? And so we're working together with other coalitions and with unions to put our heads together and to figure out what does something comprehensive look like to make sure that all of our communities are accessing what they need.
You know, Tabitha, when you started answering the question, you started with the human level before we got into the minutia. And I always felt the dreamer question is as compelling as a personal story. Of course, the details, the financial details, the programmatic details of what you're fighting for are crucial, but it's really an appeal to humanity, isn't it? I mean, like, why should we care about dreamers and their rights and their stability as the residents in our state?
It's a really good question. Right now, we see this narrative, right, during presidential debates and just this increase of hate, right, just vitriol towards immigrants. And I think first and foremost that immigrants are people, right? We're all just people fighting for our families, right? Everybody at the end of the day wants safety for their children, right? They want a place to lay their head. They want to be able to make an honest wage to put food on the table. And I think that's really the period, right? Like that's really what it's about. And humans have been moving for millennial, just living and moving, and it's just normal, right?
We're
it's
nation
just
immigrants.
natural. We are, yes, absolutely.
So
And-
ideology was both ways, both the anti-immigrant ideology, or people like me who think about my grandfather immigrating here and how important that was and the opportunities that brought. And I guess the dreamers, you're talking about young people, which is a double argument about how can you penalize young people, even if you believe it's wrong what their parents did, which I don't. But if you do think it's wrong what their parents did, I thought the argument was partly the children had no say in that decision.
Sure, yeah. Some people.
Although the parents really moved so the kids could have a better life, but that's a,
Well, sure. A lot of people,
Yeah.
that's definitely a narrative that some people talk about. And what I would like to also offer is just an acknowledgement of Indigenous people and Native Americans, right, who were on this land first. Many folks who are coming from Central America and Mexico, they are of Indigenous heritage, right? This land belongs to them, right? And I also want to acknowledge people who were enslaved, right? Africans who were enslaved and brought to America. These folks are not immigrants, right? And there are so many disparities that present themselves. And so I just want to really acknowledge that whenever we say we're a nation of immigrants or that we're all immigrants, that's not always the case. And, so I just want to acknowledge that. But yes, absolutely. I think it's just important for us to see the humanity in each other.
Mm-hmm. And how many dreamers are there in Connecticut?
That's a great question. I know that we're up in the 10,000s, and it's some people, they define dreamers in different ways. We like to use the term undocumented youth just to be inclusive of everybody. And I don't have the exact numbers, but
Well, you can't have an exact number. I mean,
well, it's hard.
but I mean, what's the ballpark?
Yeah, I say in the tens of thousands.
By like low tens, high tens? Or we
High
don't know?
tens, maybe closer to 30, 40,000, and probably more. And the thing is that not everybody comes to the forefront to say that
Right.
they're undocumented because
And by
it's
that,
scary.
what age group are we talking about? Up to what age?
Say up to 35.
Oh, up to 35.
Yeah, up to 35. Yeah.
Okay. And we're talking to Tabitha Sookdeo,
That's
the
right.
executive director, new executive director. Congratulations, Connecticut Students for a Dream, active in New Haven, active in the state on this issue here on Dateline New Haven. So tell me your personal story. You were born in Guyana and you grew up in the island of St. Martin, correct?
That's right.
When did you come here and why?
Yeah, I came to the country when I was 16 years old, and that was in 2008. It was to Jacksonville, Florida. And
The Obama year.
Yeah.
Those were optimistic times.
It was. Yeah, it was. It not only was I completely culture shocked, but it was really incredible to come to America and to see the first, African American president coming into office.
What were you thinking then about what kind of country you would come to?
So, growing up on St. Martin, I learned about Black History Month and what that meant to the United States. I grew up on a majority Black island, and so it wasn't really something that I thought about very much. I didn't have to think about that very much. I thought I was coming into a country that was, free of racism, that America had it all figured out.
I'm going to ask you to
we're all
talk real
good.
close into the mic if you don't
Yes,
mind.
definitely. Yes. So I was really shocked once I came to America and I saw, just the gross disparities in Florida, in Jacksonville. I was shocked.
So how come you came? How did your parents come here and what were they doing? What brought them to Jacksonville?
Yeah, so how do I start this? Where I lived, they were not renewing the residency permits of certain immigrant children, and this was a tactic to get certain immigrants out.
In Jacksonville.
No, this was in St. Martin.
So St. Martin's, they weren't from originally St. Martin.
Right, because we're immigrants.
Guyana, right.
Yes, so we're Guyanese
So-
immigrants.
And what brought them to St. Martin?
So my parents left Guyana because it was difficult to find jobs, right? And domestic violence and violence against women and girls were quite high. And so my folks, they left Guyana quite early in their late teenage years to find work on St. Martin. My dad was a security guard. My mom cleaned hotels. And they really just wanted a better life for us. So really, I was about to be deported from St. Martin, and my parents made the decision to move to America because my dad's mom was an American citizen, and
Oh,
we were
okay.
waiting for papers.
So you're able to come in without a problem because you're visiting the mom?
Correct, yes.
And then
So
you
we
just
came in
stayed.
on a visa.
And what happened?
So my grandmother actually passed away before everything could be finalized. And when that happens, your application, it just gets put to zero and it's canceled. And so I've been through quite a rigorous immigration battle to try to get status for my folks.
And how did you get status?
I got status because my partner is an American, and so when we got married, I was able to adjust my status.
Excellent. And then, so your parents never got it.
Right. And so the fight persists to this day. 20 years later, we're still fighting for it.
Wow.
And lots of immigration fees. You know, we're lucky. We speak English. I have a job. I'm in school. And, you know, we're just really blessed compared to many folks who don't speak English and don't have those resources.
So as an undocumented youth, you fought for access to higher ed. So you're already involved in this issue as a teenager. Tell me about that.
Sure. So when I was in Florida, I graduated from high school and I couldn't go to school right away. And it was extremely depressing for me because I loved school, right? I'm in school right now. I'm doing two graduate degrees. And I felt so depressed, and I just kind of made myself busy with doing community service work. And at the church where I was going, I invited a refugee resettlement agency called World Relief Jacksonville. And this individual came in and did a presentation about refugee resettlement. And so I was bringing in different community members to come in and to talk to the congregation. He brought this woman named Basma Alawi, who is a really incredible and almost famous, I would say, refugee in the movement right now. And after the presentation, this gentleman, his name is Travis Trice, he said, you know, we talk about refugees, but one thing we don't really talk about as much is undocumented immigrants. You never know who's sitting next to you. They could be undocumented. I almost fell out my seat. But from there, I told my story for the first time to this gentleman. And a week later, he called and said, hey, we have a keynote speaker that fell through in DC. We're doing this whole pastors, you know, for immigration reform. Would you come in and tell your story? And long story short, that really just not reinvigorated, but firstly invigorated my journey of talking about my story and just getting part of the movement. And so I just started to talk to many different people about my story and the need for immigration reform from there.
And where'd you go to college?
I went to a school called Trevecca Nazarene University. I wasn't able to go to college, but through that speaking engagement that I did in DC.
Interesting, that opened a door.
It did. There were about 4 different folks who came up to me and said, we don't care if you don't have papers. We would love for you to come to our school. And so that was one of the schools.
Whoa. So you got your undergraduate degree.
I did.
And then how'd you end up in New Haven?
Yes. So my partner was doing a PhD program, and we ended up coming here.
Oh, Yale.
Yes. And we just stayed.
But where had you met?
Oh, in Florida through Rotary International.
Rotary International?
Yes.
I just discovered we still have that in New Haven. They invited me to speak at some lunch, and they're down to like really nice people. They're down from like 200 or 300 to like 30 people.
Yeah, at the downtown club, I'm a member there.
Oh, you are?
I am. Yes, I'm a Rotarian.
Nice folks. Why tell me about why you're a Rotarian? You don't usually think of someone who's an activist from the outsider being part what used to be sort of symbolizing the most kind of establishment kind of civic group. But they're very sweet people. I enjoyed meeting them. And they're all about twice your age.
Yeah.
Because I was part of the youth contingent when I went. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also part of a youth contingent. And so in the Caribbean, Rotary International is quite different than the way that it is in America. I have generations of family members who have been Rotarians and part of Rotary. And so it's all about service above self.
Right. It is a service organization.
Yes. So that's how I got involved, and I want to carry on that legacy.
Because I always thought I really had this image. I never went to a Rotary Club meeting. When I went to one the other day, it was at this place I don't really like so much, the Old New Haven Grad Club. But it was really sweet people. And when I noticed they have these rituals, I mean, you would know about this. I don't. Where you do happy dollars. Mm-hmm. This meeting begins, and the guy who's speaking gets away from the lectern, and he goes around the room, and everyone comes armed with dollar bills. Like, I couldn't do it because I wasn't going to throw $20 in to be happy. That's
you didn't have your cash, your happy dollars?
Yeah. They have their happy dollars, say, I'm happy, and half it was sports, like, I'm happy my so-and-so team won. But then it's like, and here's $1 because I'm happy something good happened in the world. And they do their and that money then goes towards service projects, helping people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do lots of, scholarships. In the Caribbean, we would always have a Christmas concert. And all of the youth from the different primary schools, we would sing songs, and it wouldn't just be Christian traditions. It would be Hindu traditions and Jewish traditions. It was just really beautiful.
And so if you're here, even though most people are older, really, really nice people, I guess because you're part of an international network, do you feel with the Rotary Club you're going to be able to have an impact on tapping resources that exist in networks of people to do something good?
Absolutely. And just also showing the community that Rotary is not just American, right? It expands.
And they did talk about that with me. They were all showing the different stamps they got from going to different logos from Rotary clubs around the
Yeah,
world.
and polio, eradicating polio was one of the, the biggest campaigns, and I was part of that, and lots of youth have been part of eradicating polio.
So, in addition to being the Rotary, you're involved with issues. You came to New Haven because of your partner, but you went to work at IRIS. So you still had this interest in helping immigrant community as well as specifically refugees. You worked there 5 years?
Yeah, 6 years.
And how'd that go?
It was great. Chris George, I remember when he interviewed me, it was hilarious because he asked me a question and he said, "How would I say this in Spanish?" And I said it. And then he was like, "Okay, sounds great." I was like, "Do you speak Spanish?" He was like, "No." He's just so funny. And, I loved working at IRIS. I felt so seen as myself fully. I'm mixed race. I have a pretty complicated background in terms of, being from Guyana. A lot of people don't know where that is or what the colonial history is. And so I never felt like I had to explain who I was. Everyone just took me for me. And I also loved being able to learn about different cultures. I never would have been exposed to Middle Eastern cultures, for instance. There are Muslims in Guyana, but not not in the ways of direct descendants from the Middle East, like Afghanistan and Syria.
And you were director
Iraq.
of community engagement, which
Yes.
makes me think you got to know him well. You did something there I was looking up in our archives. You've been in the Independent. Something really interesting you did there was that you organized 50 students, young people, who got paid to become tree ambassadors. So you kind of combined your concern about climate with status of immigrants and refugees. Can you tell us about how you got the idea and how that worked?
Yeah, so this was an initiative. Deb Riding, who's the director of education at IRIS, she's always great about collaborating with community groups. URI, Urban Resources Initiative, I actually was an intern there.
They're amazing too, planting trees thousands all over New Haven. It's like the most beautiful thing.
Yes, it's amazing. It truly is.
It's sort of this whole sector of New Haven where people care about community and making good things happen in our life. When in the middle of the 20th century, early 20th century, people joined unions or they got involved in political parties. And now there's so much more where they kind of create their own issue interest, where you have the bicyclists and the open street artists and IRIS, which exploded here because people care about immigration, and URI with like just doing tree planting. It's sort of, I think, the biggest strength in New Haven.
It's all connected. It truly is. People are being displaced.
She did this. So she got, because of climate change.
Yeah,
right?
people are being displaced because of climate change, right? This narrative.
Climate migration.
Right, climate migration. Right, exactly. And so how do we ensure that people who are being displaced by climate change are not doubly displaced, right? What does it look like in our host communities to make sure that we have robust climate adaptation plans, right? And this is just one of those.
So that's you got involved with this with the trees.
Yes.
So what happened?
So I left before this could be fully kicked off, but I know that the team is working diligently. I think they've already identified the students. I know it was over the summer, and so I believe there were a couple of murals and things of that nature, but I left before all of that could be completed. But it's in great hands with Deb Writing.
And you're also on the board of City Seed.
I am.
And what interested me is that you become part of the community in the Greater Dwight Development Corporation. Yes. You're on that board. And the Dwight Central Management Team, you actually go to those monthly meetings in the drab substations as they build. It's the most inhuman places to supposed to bring human community connection, which always cracks me up, those cinder blocks. But you go once a month, you talk to the cops, you talk to the neighbors. Tell me about that. You live in Dwight?
So I recently moved from Dwight, but I'm still very involved. Actually, our apartment building where I used to live caught on fire, and so we were displaced.
Was that the one on Dwight Street?
Yeah, Dwight and Edgewood. Yeah. So that was us. Unfortunately, no one got hurt.
But you had to leave. They couldn't.
I had to leave. I couldn't afford anywhere else in Dwight, and I lived in Dwight for I think 7 years.
You couldn't afford Dwight.
No, we couldn't.
Dwight was not known as like pricey neighborhood, except the edge where the Yaleys rent. Right. What happened?
Yeah, it was just.
We still have Kensington Square, but you have to be on public assistance, I guess.
Right.
So you either got to be poor or rich.
Right. We couldn't afford it, and so we had to move. But of course,
But which part of town did you go to?
So I live right on the border of East Haven and New Haven.
Classic.
So I got pushed out. Yeah.
Classic. Classic. That's where people can afford now. And you over the line in East Haven?
Yes. And so, but I'm still quite involved in Dwight because I care about it, and that's still my community no matter what. And also in terms of like intergenerational support. As a young person, I want to make sure that I am there with folks who have been there for decades fighting for community rights. And if I can do a Zoom call or take notes at a meeting, like that's going to be my contribution.
And then you're also in school in addition to run this organization and being involved in community work. I learned a new phrase, MEM. It's like meme without the E, which is Masters of Environmental Management. You're in a joint law and environment program at your school, Environment and Vermont Law School. That must be working pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that. You're almost done.
Almost. So close. I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And you're trying to combine environmental management and law.
Correct.
You say you want to use that to, quote, empower displaced people. Is that going back to how climate change is creating a lot more migration and you're trying to combine protecting the environment but also help people deal with a changing environment?
Absolutely. I think.
How does that work out specifically? What do you see yourself doing that in 10 years?
Yeah, so, a lot of the type of organizing work that we do at C4D has to do with what youth are interested in. And you have a growing number of youth who are passionate about climate change, right? And so I think this is a really ripe opportunity for us to combine both of those things because, it might not be a common phrase, like the phrase climate change. You might not hear immigrants talking about it who are getting to the United States, but they might be describing climate change, right? They might be saying, the land is no longer arable, right? The rain is not falling like it used to, or the rain is falling too much, right? And crops are being completely killed, right? We're hearing a lot of these types of stories, and it's important for us to continue to talk about it.
And you're not, but also do something about it.
Absolutely, right? I think that providing relocation services and empowering immigrants, right, who arrive here is a type of climate adaptation, and we have to really start thinking about that narrative.
Very interesting. So Tabitha Sookdeo is the head of what she just referred to as C4D. I love that. For the number 4.
That's right.
C4D for FOR, Connecticut Students for a Dream. How many people work in that organization?
Yeah. So
because you're going to have 3 offices now. That's
right.
And do you work out of the New Haven office?
Yeah, so I work in I drive around, really. That's what I've been doing quite a lot these days. I work from home, but also we work out at the Pride Center. I've been there a couple of times. They're great partners, and I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that. We're looking for a larger space, and so if anybody knows of that would be great. But to answer your question about how many people, yeah, so we're at 9 folks, and we're trying to get up to 14 by the end of the year.
And how many people, how many members are there of the group, or is it kind of some number of people involved as volunteers, or is there a membership organization?
Oh, I see what you're saying, like how many members. Yeah, I believe currently we have maybe about 50 active members who are coming to meetings, but we also just have like a large database. We've been able to mobilize over 5,000 youth over the past 14 years.
To do what? Go up to the Capitol, go to demonstrations.
Yeah, right. We've been able to pass in-state tuition for undocumented youth. That's something that many states don't have.
You mean at state universities?
Correct, right. So if you've graduated, from a high school, there's certain requirements, like I believe 2 or 3 years, you would have had to attended a high school.
And you did expand Husky.
Yes. We've also done aid, institutional aid for undocumented folks, right? So that they can access that scholarship fund. And so, yes, now our focus is on Husky, expanding state Medicaid.
All right. And is that the main goal this year? Are you also doing any work in schools or in national stuff?
Yes, great question. So that is our main objective, but we're also looking at licensure. So let's say you're, you have DACA and you went to nursing school, right? And you want to practice being a nurse. There are certain requirements that might prevent you from doing that. And so we're looking into what that looks like. And on a national level, of course, we're trying to talk more about DACA. We're going to be going to New Orleans. And we've been doing...
that's a tough court. That's a court district.
Yes. And also, of course, the border bill, we actually recently went down to Washington, D.C. to talk to a few senators and
what's your position on that one? I know people are kind of upset with Chris Murphy. They don't like the compromise, right?
Yeah. So our biggest concern is just this provision about policing and allowing for the mechanism of state police to serve as ICE officers. That's our biggest concern that we've been pushing for, to say that is not something that we want to support.
What's the concern there? They don't have the training. They don't have necessarily, they might have a different agenda coming from states that are anti-immigrant, or what's the concern?
Yeah, the concern there is that community, right? So for instance, we talk about DCMT and we talk about community policing. It's not the job of the police to deport people and to detain community members, right, who are not doing anything wrong. And so the police really, that's just not our priority.
And then it goes harder for those people to, we've seen New Haven was so important. We had a lot of fights over changing our general order so that immigrants could trust the police.
Exactly.
So they don't become the victims of crime until
Exactly.
we change the order.
Right.
If they thought the police might help deport you, then you're not going to tell them that when you come back from your day labor job, you're getting robbed of money because people say you're not going to go to the police.
Or domestic violence, right? There's lots of studies and research in states where they've enacted, this kind of protocols of having police be involved, right, in deportation proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
It's women, especially, right, are disproportionately affected by this, right, because they won't feel safe to go to the police and to report domestic violence or crime. And so we don't want to compound things in that way. But we have confidence that, this border bill will not be reintroduced. There are different ways of bringing about immigration reform that is more humane to immigrants.
What would you like to see?
So I think there needs to be a lot of reform. And I should say this is from my own perspective, not from C4D's perspective. There's reform that needs to happen at the border, right? For instance, when we think of folks coming across the border, I don't think most folks are thinking about Afghans, right? Or about Africans, right? Or Haitians, right? There are quite a diverse group of people that are coming across the border. And there's a need for cultural sensitivity, right? From the officers that are processing cases for asylum, right? And we need to ensure that there's due process. A lot of the language in the border bill does not allow for the due process proceedings, right? It gives a lot of discretion to officers, and we're just worried about that.
And then how can our listeners get involved with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I would love to meet folks. So we have a fundraiser that's happening on the 1st of October. And so we'd love to invite folks. It's going to be at Chipotle. And also this Saturday, there's going to be a book reading by this author. Her name is Carla. It's going to be at Possible Future. So we'd love to have people there. But most of all, just coming to our website and going to the Husky for Immigrants website and getting involved there. I'd love to connect with them.
And what's your website?
Yes. So it's www.ct. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm sorry. I'm actually trying to fight to be able to put on some music. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So just go to Google and type in Connecticut Students for a Dream. So it's ct4adream.org. We have some work to do on there, but you can find all of our information. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, so just find us over there. Thank you.
All right. And so thanks for being on. I'm now being stopped from putting some music on as we say goodbye, but I'm hoping to get access to that soon.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tabitha Sookdeo for coming on the air today. I loved hearing about all that you're up to. I think it's great work.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. Thanks to Harry Jost and Doreen Shunecki for today's production of the show. And I think we're trying to get to our final song, but believe it or not, we right now have a contest for handling our controls, and I think the producers are not aware that this is happening. We're trying to get our
we should sing a
music.
song, right?
No, you definitely don't want that. So hold on a second. If we could page Harry Jost, if he could please allow us to have access to the goodbye music. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, we're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.